Hey everyone! Welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Bold and Beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in.
The silence in the Forrester mansion that night was unlike any other silence Luna Nozawa had ever experienced in her young life. It wasn't the calm kind, the sort of hush that fell over a house when everyone was asleep or when a family meal had ended in laughter and goodnight kisses. No, this silence felt charged, as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for something catastrophic to break. And when the door finally creaked open and John Finn Finnegan's step, and though Finn had never been her father, not in the biological sense, there was something about the way he stood there, shoulders squared, eyes darkened with a pain she couldn't quite decipher, that made him feel like some long-lost parent come to deliver a verdict she wasn't prepared to face, his expression unreadable as the light caught the sharp angles of his face, revealing not the gentle healer she had once known but a man who looked almost sculpted by grief and betrayal, the same grief that had hollowed out his marriage with Steffi Forrester, the same betrayal that had left him wondering where he belonged in a world where secrets seemed to bloom like poison flowers. Luna's voice trembled again, softer this time, as though afraid the wrong word might shatter him completely. Finn, you look different, and it was true, he did, because gone was the warm, reassuring doctor who used to hold her hand in the hospital corridors and tell her everything would be all right, and in his place was someone sharper, colder, a Finn who seemed to be carrying the weight of not only his motherly's cruelty but also the unbearable knowledge that Luna's pregnancy was the epicenter of the earthquake tearing both the Spencer and Forrester clans apart, and yet as he moved closer, his footsteps slow and deliberate, she realized that what terrified her most wasn't his anger but the emptiness in his eyes, a kind of blankness that spoke louder than rage ever could, as if he had crossed into some inner territory where logic and compassion no longer mattered, where only truth and justice existed, no matter how brutal. Luna backed up instinctively, her hand brushing against the antique Forrester table as though it could steady her, and she tried to fill the space between them with words, desperate, fumbling words. If this is about Will, or Remy, or whatever you've heard, I swear I can explain, but Finn only shook his head, slow and deliberate, the kind of gesture that shut down hope before it had a chance to breathe, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low and heavy, like a verdict handed down in a courtroom. This isn't about what I've heard, Luna, it's about what I see, what I can't unsee anymore, it's about who you've become, and those words sliced through her like glass, because she knew what he was really saying, that she wasn't the innocent, hopeful young woman who had once dreamed of building a future untouched by scandal, that she had crossed lines, broken trusts, and now stood in front of him as someone unrecognizable even to herself. Her tears came hot and fast, sliding down her cheeks as she begged him with a childlike desperation, please, don't look at me like that, don't make me feel like I've lost you too. But Finn's jaw clenched and his silence answered her more brutally than words ever could, because in that silence she understood that the man who had once been her anchor had transformed into something else entirely, not her savior, not her confidant, but a kind of judge, maybe even an executioner of her illusions. And when he finally reached out, not to hold her, not to comfort her, but to lift her chin so she was forced to meet the cold truth in his eyes, she realized with a shudder that her whispered question, Dad, is that you, wasn't really about biology or even about their fragile, tangled bond. It was about the haunting realization that Finn had become a father figure in the worst way possible, a man who had come not to rescue her but to confront her with the choices she had made and the consequences that could no longer be avoided. And as her sobs filled the vast emptiness of the room, bouncing off the Forrester portraits like echoes of judgment, she knew this confrontation would change everything. But instead of responding to her plea, Finn's eyes drifted past Luna, as if he were staring at ghosts only he could see, and when his lips finally parted, his words came out clipped, deliberate, each one carrying the weight of a man who had been broken and rebuilt in the fires of betrayal. You keep telling me not to look at you like that, Luna, but how else am I supposed to look at someone who shattered everything I thought I knew about this family, about myself? And his voice cracked on that last word, the fissure revealing the raw wound underneath his calm exterior, because Finn had built his identity on being the man who healed, the man who fixed what was broken, whether it was a patient on his table or a rift in his marriage. And now here he stood in front of her, realizing that he couldn't heal this, couldn't stitch together the jagged edges of a truth that had cut too deep. And Luna felt her breath catch as she whispered, I never meant to hurt anyone, the words spilling out like water from a cracked vase, but Finn only shook his head, his expression twisting, half grief and half anger. That's the thing, Luna, no one ever means to, but intentions don't erase consequences, they don't erase the way my mother lied, the way your choices dragged us all into a mess so big it's swallowing everything in its path. He stepped closer then, close enough that she could see the storm behind his eyes, and for a fleeting second she thought he might break down, collapse under the weight of it all, but instead his tone hardened, the doctor in him giving way to something more primal. When I walked in here tonight, part of me wanted to protect you, like I always have, but the other part can't stop thinking about how much you remind me of her, of Lee. How she twisted the truth, how she used love like a weapon, and how I was too blind to stop her before she destroyed everything. At the mention of Lee's name, Luna's knees went weak, her hand clutching at the edge of the table to keep from falling, because she had lived her whole life under the shadow of Lee Nozawa's cold judgment, and to hear Finn, the one person she thought saw her differently, compare her to the woman who had once tried to erase her existence, it was unbearable, and she sobbed out, "Don't say that, please, I'm not like her, I'm not." But Finn's silence was sharper than any blade, and when he finally spoke, his voice was softer now, but softer in the way of a storm's eye, eerie and dangerous. "Then prove it, prove to me that you're not her, that you're not just another liar hiding behind excuses, because right now, Luna, I don't know who you are, I don't know if the girl I once believed in even exists anymore." Her heart pounded so violently she thought it might tear through her chest, and in a trembling rush of desperation, she reached for him, clutching his arm, her nails digging slightly into his skin as if anchoring herself to him could keep him from drifting further away. "I'm still me, Finn, I swear I'm still me, I made mistakes, I was scared, I thought if the truth came out, I'd lose everything," but he cut her off with a pained laugh, bitter and hollow. "And why do you believe you kept anything? You've already lost it all, you just don't realize it yet." His words sent her reeling, her thoughts racing back to Will, Remy, and the unborn child she carried, and for the first time, she wondered if Finn was right, if she had been clinging to fragile illusions all along, illusions that were already crumbling in her hands. She wanted to scream at him, beg him to see the pieces of her heart that still loved and cared, but Finn's expression shifted again, softening for a flicker of a moment as he whispered something that made her freeze in place. "When you looked at me just now and said, 'Dad, is that you?' Do you know how I felt? I felt like I was staring in a mirror I didn't want to see, because maybe I have become something else, something I don't even recognize anymore, and maybe you're right to be afraid, because I'm not the man you used to know, I can't be." That confession shook Luna to her core, because it wasn't just an indictment of her, it was an admission that Finn himself had changed, that the weight of secrets and betrayals had carved him into someone darker, someone she couldn't pred, and his response, when it came, was a low mutter that froze her to the bone. "I'm the man who will determine what happens to you next." Luna's breath hitched in her throat at Finn's words, that cold promise that he was the one who had to decide what happens to you next, and the weight of it pressed down on her like a physical force, because it wasn't just a threat, it was a sentence, a reminder that her fate was no longer entirely in her hands, and as she tried to steady herself she realized she couldn't read him anymore, couldn't anticipate his next move, and that uncertainty was more terrifying than any shouted accusation. More terrifying than Bill Spencer's fury or Lee's ice, because at least with them she knew what weapons they wielded, but Finn was unpredictable now, a man at war with himself, and when he turned his head slightly, as if listening to some invisible voice in the room, she swore she saw the shadow of Lee in him, the same cold, clinical detachment that once made her feel like nothing more than an unwanted mistake, and the words slipped out of her mouth before she could stop them, trembling and raw. "You sound like her, you sound like Lee," and she instantly regretted saying it because his jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing with a fury that simmered just beneath the surface. "Don't you dare put me in the same breath as her," he snapped, and for the first time his voice rose, cracking the stillness of the mansion like a whip, and Luna flinched, shrinking back, tears spilling faster as she whispered, "Then stop looking at me like I'm already guilty," but Finn only laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Guilty? Do you think this is about guilt? This isn't a courtroom, Luna. This is reality, and in reality, choices have consequences, whether you're ready for them or not." He stepped closer again, and she could feel the heat of his presence, the intensity rolling off him like fire, and she knew this was no longer just about her mistakes with Will or Remy, this was about something bigger, something inside Finn that had broken, something that made him see her not just as a girl in trouble but as a symbol of every betrayal he'd ever suffered, every truth he'd ever been denied. And she tried one last time to reach him, her voice shaking as she pleaded, "You've always believed in me, Finn, you've always told me I was better than my worst mistake, don't stop believing in me now." But he stared at her for a long, unbearable moment before finally answering, his voice low and hollow, "The man who believed in you isn't standing here anymore, Luna. That man died the moment I realized I couldn't save anyone, not my marriage, not my family, not you." Those words struck her harder than any slap could, because they weren't just cruel, they were final, and she felt her knees buckle as sobs tore through her chest. But even as she broke down, Finn didn't move to comfort her, didn't reach out like he once would have, and that absence, that refusal, was the clearest sign yet that something inside him had shifted forever. And when he finally turned his back on her, his voice drifting back like a ghost, "If you want me to see you as more than her, more than Lee's shadow, then you'd better find a way to prove it, because right now, I don't know if I see anything worth saving." She felt the last thread of safety she'd clung to snap, leaving her alone in the mansion's vast silence. Her whispered question, "Dad, is that you?" echoing in her own ears, unanswered, as she realized the man she had once seen as protector, as family, might now be the very person who destroyed her. But Luna couldn't let him walk away, not when every nerve in her body screamed that if she let Finn leave like this, she would lose him forever. So she stumbled forward, her sobs choking her voice as she cried out, "No, please, don't turn your back on me, not you, not when everyone else has." And the sound of her, "Do you think you are the only one who has lost everything? I lost Steffi, my marriage, and my trust in my own mother, and now when I look at you, all I see are the same lies, the same betrayals, circling me like vultures. Tell me, Luna, how am I expected to save you when I can't save myself?" His voice cracked on those last words, the fury giving way to grief so deep it frightened her, and she rushed toward him, clutching at his chest, her tears soaking into his shirt as she pleaded, "Then let me save you, let me prove I'm not like her, I'm not like Lee. I swear to you I never wanted this, I never wanted to hurt anyone, I just wanted to be loved, to belong somewhere." And for a fleeting second she felt him falter beneath her hands, felt the tension in his bow. "Do you believe this is about love? Love is what brought us here in the first place, twisted love, conditional love, love used as leverage, and now I'm expected to believe that your love is any different?" She shook her head violently, her hair whipping around her tear-streaked face as she cried, "Because it is." Finn's laugh was bitter, hollow, and made her blood run cold. "Funny, because that's exactly what she used to say too, and look how that turned out," he said. The words struck her like physical blows, and she realized he wasn't just angry at her, but terrified that she was a mirror of the woman who had betrayed him most. "Maybe you were right, maybe I am your father now, because someone has to hold you accountable, someone has to stop this cycle before it swallows us all." Luna felt the ground beneath her give way, because those words weren't just confrontation, but a promise that whatever came next would change everything. Her body shook with sobs, and she realized the man standing before her was no longer the Finn she had once trusted.